Hello everybody, Basic Ollie here. I hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to another video. Now, I always get asked, how do I prepare for endurance races and specifically special events when it comes to iRacing? Now, today's video is going to be all about how we do that as a team and how we manage to basically get our strategies sorted and how we normally, thankfully, get some good results. Now, if you've been following this channel this year, when it comes to special events, BRT, Basic Racing Team, the team that I've formed, has been doing very, very well this year. We're far from the best. We do not set purple times all the time. In fact, we're not normally in the top 10 for the fastest times. But what we do have is consistency and good teamwork and good strategy. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly what we do to prepare for special events, endurance races, all that kind of stuff, and how you can apply that to your team as well, and you can yourself improve those results and hopefully, fingers crossed with any luck, get that first special event win, first endurance win, whatever it may be. Hopefully this video will help you out. So let's crack on with the video. So let's start with the very basics. Now, the first thing I can absolutely recommend you do if you are looking to do your first ever special event on iRacing is to go on the forums. Now, if you're not doing a special event, you're just doing a normal endurance race like the 6 hour, 2 hour 40 or 3 hour, you don't need to worry about this too much. But perfect example of this special event was the Fuji 8 hour this weekend. All right, go on the forums, it tells you everything you need to know, such as the time slots, the date in sim, the time the race actually starts, how many quali laps, the race distance, DQ limits, all that good stuff. But the main thing is the car BOP. Now, BOP stands for balance of performance. Okay. Now, what iRacing try to do before the special event is to make the cars as even as they possibly can. It's a thankless task because it's so difficult to get right, and I do not envy them for trying to do this for every special event, but they do it. And to be fair, for this weekend Fuji, apart from the Porsche being very much underpowered and the McLaren being a little bit too quick, it's probably one of the best BOPs that we've seen in a long time. Now, BOP is exactly what it says on the tin. It is designed to make anybody be able to pick any car and be competitive, but there's always one or two cars that do stick out, so do bear that in mind. So with all that information taken in, with such things like the date time, you can start getting a picture of what the special event is going to be like. So for like this Fuji 8 hour, we knew it was an 8 hour race, and we knew it started at 8 AM in the morning. So we knew temperatures were going to start low and then they were going to rise. And that is something that you need to take into consideration when you're doing these endurance races, whether it's just a normal endurance race or a special event. If it is an endurance race, temperatures will change. All right. So do keep that in mind when you are thinking of doing an endurance race on iRacing, because track temperature on this sim is pretty much everything these days. All right. So do keep that in mind. Now you've looked at the forums and you've taken all that information in, it's time to decide what car you would like to be in. Same for a special event or same for any normal endurance race on iRacing. It's vital that you pick the right car for you. Now, one thing I have to emphasize all the time is that people do this and they will just go for the car that has the fastest lap. And the Fuji 8 hour, again, is a perfect example of this. Okay, the McLaren by far was the quickest. It even had a BOP midway through the week. It lost 2% power and it was still the fastest car. In a straight line, it was just too quick. But what people failed to realise is that the McLaren was very good in the 40-minute VRS races. Over an endurance stint where the McLaren had to do about 36, 37, 38 laps, by the end of the stint, of 5-6 laps left to go, it honked. It was really, really bad. Only the best boys and girls were able to get the most out of that thing, and it was a death trap. So don't fall into the trap of thinking, let's go for the car with the fastest lap every single time. It is not always the case, all right? Always, if you can, do a full stint before the actual event itself and have a look at those tyres and how you feel on the last 10 laps, because you might have been going half a second a lap than the other car that you're considering per lap. But if at the end of that stint those tyres die off and you spin and you lose about 15 seconds, you go into the wall and get damage, it was utterly pointless. So one of my tips here, if you're doing any sort of endurance race in iRacing, always go for the car that you're most comfortable in. It's not always about out-and-out pace. So looking at the cars then, regardless of the pace, what we like to do in BRT is we will basically try every car during the week of the special event, or a 6-hour, 3-hour, whatnot on iRacing. Because what iRacing likes to do, and it does very often, and it does very well, is they will do shortened versions of the endurance races during the week of that event. For example, again, Fuji 8-hour this weekend. VRS went to Fuji as well, and it did 40-minute races with the BOP applied. So what you can do is do some sprint races during the week, and you can collect a lot, and I mean a lot, of useful information. It's by far the best way, in my opinion, to prepare for an endurance race, because it's at the track that you're going to be at. You'll be able to use the car that you like. You'll be able to have a look at the tyre wear, be able to have a look at the fuel, and you can find out and you can think of a strategy during that week. All right. So my tip here is to basically do the shortened versions of the race, like the week of the special event or the endurance race that you are doing. Now, Fuji was an absolute pain for me. It's not a track I particularly like, and GT3s I'm not particularly quick in. So it took me quite a while to pick the right car. I tried the McLaren, I tried the Porsche, and I tried the Ferrari and several others, but for us, it turned out to be the Ferrari, and I'll explain to you why. Okay, so we did the VRS races with the BOP applied, and the Porsche, as good as that felt, and it felt brilliant, it was an absolute dog in the straight line. It was awful. Now, Fuji is notoriously difficult to overtake, and really the only opportunity you get for overtaking is in turn 1. So our thought process here is there's only one opportunity really to overtake on Fuji, unless you're a little bit brave, and that is into turn 1. So if we're quick in the Porsche, but we can't overtake because it's too slow in a straight line into turn 1, we're not going to make any progress. So for that reason, we've ruled the Porsche out. All right. Now let's talk about the McLaren. Now the McLaren, like I said earlier, was by far the fastest car. When I was in it, I was able to consistently get good results in the sprint. However, during the end of the sprint races, even in the last 2 or 3 laps, I start to really feel the tyre wear. Now, that is only in a 24-lap race. The endurance race, more than likely, you're going to have to do about 38 laps, let's say, in the McLaren. So that's an extra 14 laps on those set of tyres. Now, every single lap you do above those 24 laps that you do in the sprint, that's unknown territory. You haven't done it before, all right? And it just gets worse and worse and worse. So I highly recommend you go and do a practice session, all right? Even if it's a VRS one, or, well, the VRS one will limit you on fuel, but I would go and do the actual endurance race practice events. They're always available on iRacing, 2 hours long. Put a full tank in and see how far you can go. Because even though the McLaren is good, the tyre wear's bad. You might be thinking to yourself, I could get away with it. But always try and do a full stint run if you can. Now, when we were doing the sprint races in the McLaren, because I felt that tyre wear with 2 or 3 laps to go, even with just 24 laps, that kind of ruled it out for me. Okay, I also got my teammate to try the McLaren as well, and the car itself was just a little bit too sketchy. Although it was very quick over a lap time, probably in the right absolute kind of like esports level hands, it would be the quickest car. But it is just too deadly. The risk is too much. So with that in mind, we decided to not go with it. So Porsche is nice, but we can't use the Porsche because it cannot overtake into turn 1. McLaren, very quick, but too deadly, so we've also ruled that one out as well. So, what about the Ferrari? Well, the Ferrari was kind of the best of both worlds, but the Ferrari had a trick up its sleeve. So, whilst we were doing the VRS sprint races, we realised that the Ferrari was actually quite good on fuel. Now, remember earlier when I said to check the forums with the BOP? Please do that, because this really emphasised just how important that is, because the Ferrari only lost 1% of its fuel. So what we were finding is that the Ferrari and Porsche were very similar on fuel. All right, very similar. But the Ferrari had almost 3 litres extra in a tank. 3 litres. Over an endurance race, that is huge per stint, okay? And with that in mind, we could do an extra 2 to 3 laps on average. I mean, on average, compared to everyone in the field. Even other Ferraris were managing to do it. Porsches, McLarens, Beamers, getting nowhere near it. All right, getting nowhere near it. So the Ferrari had a huge advantage on the fuel. And with that in mind, the Ferrari was also better than the Porsche going into turn 1 for that vital overtake that I was talking about earlier. So the Ferrari, for us, was a clear winner. Faster than the Porsche in a straight line, so it could overtake the Porsches. Slower than the McLaren, but over a stint, the Ferrari was extremely stable, and it was by far the best on tyres that we were finding throughout the week when we were testing the VRS. And it was just an absolute beast on fuel. So, what we've done there is we've had a look at the BOP. We examined the cars. We've seen the Porsche, the McLaren, the Ferrari, the 3 cars that we're looking at in particular in this example. And we saw that the Porsche, although it was good on fuel, the fuel tank was too small and it was too slow into turn 1. The Macca was very quick, but unfortunately it was just too deadly. So we decided to rule that out. And then you had the Ferrari, which wasn't as quick as the Macca, but it had very good fuel usage. The tank was way bigger than the Porsche for some reason. And even though it had a minus 2% BOP like the Porsche and the Macca did, it was kind of in between them both. All right, so it was never going to be quicker than the Macca, but it was going to be quicker than the Porsche. And it had enough oomph to overtake into turn 1. So with all that, we'll have a look at the BOP on the forums, doing the races during the week in VRS, and doing a full stint run on the tyres. We could see that the Ferrari was the one. All right, so we follow the stages, forums, BOP, doing the sprint races, examining the tyres, the fuel, and the pace. The Ferrari is the winner. Now that we've picked a car, we decide to then look at the strategies for this race. Now, remember when I said the Ferrari was very good on fuel and it had a bigger tank? This was absolutely vital in our race, all right? So when it comes to these endurance races, what we like to do is try to calculate the average lap, how much fuel we have in the tank, and how much fuel we're using per lap. Now, we take that information, we take it, and we have a look at what the fuel usage is on a push lap, a normal lap, and a fuel-saving lap, okay? And we have a look at the differences, okay? Now, in this example here, what tend to happen with the Ferrari is if you pushed, you didn't really get to go any further than the other cars, maybe a lap if you're lucky. But you wore out the tyres more, all right? And it was very hard to stay consistent because there are long stints, an hour-long stint. And to stay consistent for an hour when you're pushing is quite tough. So what we decided was to go for a fuel-saving strategy, because what we found is with the average lap time and how many laps there's actually going to be in the race and our fuel tank, if we did a push or normal stint, okay, we would end up having to do 7 pit stops. 7 pit stops, all right? But if we did fuel-saving stints for the whole race, which sounds a bit crazy, but stay with me, if we managed to do that throughout the whole race, we could save a pit stop. And a pit stop at Fuji is massive, about 1 minute and 10 seconds. So we're saving about 70 seconds in total by doing this strategy, which sounds good. But what you've also got to make sure when you come up with these strategies and you think about, right, let's try and save a pit stop, it will save us a lot of time. You've also got to make sure over those 7 or 8 hours that your average lap time does not drop below, or your time you'd lose for fuel saving does not go below 1 minute and 10. Now, what I mean by this is, let's just say this Fuji 8-hour race, right? You've got your push laps or your normal laps, you know what they are, and you've also got your fuel saving laps, okay? So what we like to do is look at the time difference between a normal lap, all right, or a push lap, and a fuel saving lap. And once we have that time difference, we will then try to calculate it into how much time it would cost us fuel saving comparing to push, and whether the fuel saving would make up for the 1 minute and 10 seconds that you'd lose. Because it might just be pushing, even though it will cost you an extra pit stop, it will actually be quicker, because the fuel saving, you just lose too much time over a lap during the distance of the race. Now, I hope that does make sense. best example I can give is, let's just say the race is 300 laps long, and with a fuel saving, we are, let's say, on average half a second slower per lap with a fuel saving. By the time you get to that final stop, you're absolutely out of it. There's no point. Half a second is way too much time. All right, way too much time. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave a link in the description for a website that you can use to actually help you calculate all this kind of stuff. And it will help you out, all right? So I'll leave a link in the description for you, and you can use that, and it's actually on the screen now. It's not quite the one we use, but it should give you the things that you do need, basically. And, yeah, you should be absolutely fine. So that is how we do it. That is how we prepare or choose the car that we want for the event, with all that information taken in. So lastly, all you've got to do is just put that all together and try and have a good race. Simple as that, really. Stay fast, stay consistent, try not make any mistakes, enjoy yourself whilst you're on the track, have a good laugh, and if you follow these steps, you'll be absolutely fine. It's exactly what we have been doing all year this year, and it's been working a treat. I know sometimes when you're listening to the strategy stuff there, it can sound confusing, but once you start doing it yourself, you'll start to understand it, and yeah, it will really, really be beneficial to you and your team. Now, if you enjoyed that video and you like the fact that I've basically given you an in-depth guide or a view into how we prepare for our special events or any of our endurance races, please do hit the like button. Do subscribe to the channel. And yeah, that's all I can really ask for you. Thank you very much for watching. Take care. Have an awesome day. Ta-da.